of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 419. Andrew with you as always. I'm joined by Derek, aka D4 3.
I'm happy to be here again. We got to start off the show, obviously, talking about the rumors of a new NCAA basketball game coming to market from EA Sports.
Those rumors certainly caught our attention when they popped up on Twitter there, and it goes back to what we've been talking about, Derek. What a good idea that would be for EA. So this is intriguing.
It's very intriguing. Obviously, at this point, it's just speculation, and that speculation started because of a tweet from the main EA Sports account. They stated, "Madness loading," and that got people incredibly excited because how often does the EA account talk about basketball or college basketball?
It's been years, quite frankly. I mean, we've talked about how there's been a lack of updates for NBA Live since, 2020? 2019?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously people are going to get super excited about that. And obviously there were a lot of fans of the college basketball series, whether it was, from EA, whether it was NCAA Basketball series or previously, the NCAA March Madness series, etc. So we talked about it on a recent episode of the podcast, and I think I had interrupted you and was like, listen, I think this would be a really good idea. If they don't end up pursuing an NBA game because maybe they don't think they could compete with NBA 2K, maybe they don't have the people in place that they think that, would do a great job, etc. Maybe they try to make a great college basketball game. And then if the college basketball game sells and they have enough licenses and it does well overall, that gives them that strong base for an NBA game. So, I don't know if they're going to do it or not. I don't know if it's just rumors, speculation, or it's just us being excited because we haven't heard from them in so long. But I do think it would be a power move and a smart move to be the first company back into that college basketball gaming space.
Oh, it definitely would. And there's sense in not going up against 2K, as we said before. I mean, look, there's going to be comparisons. It's a basketball game, a sim-oriented basketball game, presumably, if it was to come back. So there's going to be comparisons as far as the mechanics and whatnot. But as far as being an NBA game, you do avoid some of that direct competition. If people want a college game, suddenly you're the only game in town for that. Just the way 2K has been the only game in town for the NBA. So there's definitely some sense in that. They do have to come back strong if they are to succeed with that. It is inadvisable, however, to throw that tweet out there if there's nothing in the works, because it's going to get people speculating and obviously disappointed, Derek, if they don't come through with the goods.
Right. I will say one thing before I talk about that. We have talked about it so many times on this podcast before. It's not who does it first, it's who does it better, right? So, like you just stated, if they do come back with a college basketball game next year, which is what the rumor is, they have to, have a strong showing right out of the gate, because any weakness in that game, whether it be features, overall depth, customization, graphics related, etc. If there's any weaknesses, NBA 2K, 2K Sports, is in visual concepts, they're going to jump all over it, and they are going to more than likely do it better and market it better, etc. So that it is absolutely vital that if they actually do this, that they put the necessary time and resources into it and just make it a complete experience with that new title. Yeah, I mean, as far as, getting people excited and all of that stuff, the thing is that people are craving something different. We've talked about 2K fatigue. People are craving not only just another college basketball game, but they're just craving a different type of basketball gaming experience, whether it be, a different type of NBA game, so different gameplay on the floor, different graphics, etc. Whether it be a college basketball game or, a new basketball arcade game, they just want another game, another strong game that they can sink their teeth into and just really enjoy it. And that's what's missing right now in the space. right? Is just you feel like, oh, well, if I want to play a new basketball video game, I have to play NBA 2K. And that's what's frustrating people.
Exactly. I mean, people like us remember when there were multiple games on the market, not just EA and 2K, but multiple developers, Konami, Sony, etc. And people who don't remember that still have heard stories about it, or even if they aren't really aware of that history there, they would still, they're at a point where they would like an alternative in the space, because there is that fatigue is definitely real, as we've talked about before. You see it on Twitter, on Reddit, people saying that they're buying the new 2K out of obligation, out of kind of a general satisfaction, but still there's also a lot of dissatisfaction there. They want a new NBA game, that's the only game in town. Again, people can downplay the importance of an alternative and talk about how EA Sports has failed in the past, and that to that latter point, that is certainly a valid concern, but we do need alternatives in the space. We absolutely do.
No, 100%. I mean, look at, I want to go back to the popularity of college basketball video games. Look at how popular this College Hoops 2K8 tournament is with people that are participating. Look how much fun they are having with this college basketball game, with the atmosphere. I think it was Brent Lane that said it. He said that after one of his most recent game, he said it felt like a real college basketball game, like with the atmosphere, with the on-court happenings, all of that stuff. Look at how much people are enjoying this game. Every single time I connect with somebody too on a game like NCAA Basketball 10, like I just connected with NBA Live Girl on that, and we played 2 games last night. And every time I connect with somebody on that game, people are just having a blast. The atmosphere is great. The graphics are great. It's just super exciting and immersive. There's something different about the college basketball game as opposed to the NBA. The crowd is louder. The action is often faster. Overall, you're not dealing with, the big names the same as you are in the NBA a lot of times. You can even make more video game legends, I would say, in the college game, etc. But I find that the college basketball video gaming experience can be super exciting, and it is a shame that we don't have a game in that space right now. So hopefully that is what they're going to do. Hopefully that's one of their next moves, is to make a great college basketball video game.
Fingers crossed. I mean, we've been waiting for some big news like that in the basketball gaming community for, years now, since Live disappeared. And of course, the college games have been absent for even longer. College Hoops 2K8, the final 2K college game, NCAA Basketball 10, the final EA one. And look, we've had some great college mods for NBA Live and NBA 2K over the years, but it's just not the same as an actual college game as far as getting all the rules, the atmosphere, the presentation. Again, not to downplay the fantastic mods we've seen, but having that in the game by default, having that game programmed to be a college game, not just a reskin of an NBA game, it really makes a difference.
Right. You can't mod in the college announcers that, talk so excited about the action, right? And they have the college lines and all of that stuff. You can't mod in the college crowd noise, right? Like, you can't make every arena have the college crowd noise, or even one arena have the accurate college crowd noise. So, like, the mods are great, like the 2K14 college mods, all of that stuff. And the crowds are a little bit louder than, the newer 2Ks and those older games, and they're a little bit more rowdy. But nothing will compare to an actual college basketball game. And, people have tried to do that with the Maddens, I believe. And even like some of the games like Maximum Football or Access Football, the games that don't really have the college license, but they try to put like college teams on the field. You know what they keep saying, and I look at all the different threads. They keep going back to NCAA Football 14. Why? Because it was an officially licensed NCAA football game that gave them that full college football experience, with the crowd, with the jerseys looking exactly right, with the helmets looking right, with all the rules right, all of that stuff. So, like, it will never compare. Any mod that you do, or any ROM hack or anything like that, is never really going to compare to having a full-fledged college basketball title.
No, there are limitations, and we do the best we can within those limitations to make fantastic mods, but some things have to be there officially, programmed in to the AI and whatnot, to really have that true college experience. And to that point, you mentioned the College Hoops 2K8 tournament rolls on with frankly some epic games. And you actually sent me a message this morning saying that you were witness to yet another one.
I think it was the best game of the tournament, honestly. It was Nate Stasho, the Live 2001 Legends guy, and he was using Kansas versus, 707 using UCLA. So two very evenly matched teams. I think Kansas is 88 overall in the game. UCLA is 87. And there were so many lead changes in the first half. They're just trading baskets, some great defensive plays, mixing it up, a lot of, between drives, post-ups, and in threes. And it's like, this is what it's all about. Like, it was just pure basketball awesomeness. And then Nate went up by about 11 to 13 points in the second half, and there was only about 4 or 5 minutes to go. And 707 went on this flurry with Darren Collison, so number 2, I believe, for UCLA, and he hit like 4 or 5 threes over the course of the last 4 minutes, got the game within 1 with like 10 to 15 seconds left, and Nate had to hit free throws in order to, seal that game. But what a comeback, what a game. That's what it's all about. 707 was a great sport about dropping the game and, and being out of the tournament. He was just like, wow, even though I lost, that game was epic. Like, I just had a blast. And Nate said the same thing, he barely won that game, but he just had such a good time. And that's what the tournament is about. Everybody has been such a great sport. There's been so many close games. Everybody's competing really hard. And yeah, I can't say enough about how great the tournament has gone. Nate Stasho, Kansas, moves on to the Final Four, where he will face King J. Mace, who knocked out Ohio State, John Jake Gaming, in the last round. And King J. Mace is Cal, so that's going to be a great matchup. And on the other side, Brent Lane ended up beating our friend Stildo 33, Ken, One Kidney Kenny, who's been on the show before, in another really close game. And he will face off the winner of it's Freak Band, who's using UAB, and Kid Cash, who's using Pitt. But yeah, we'll have the Final Four decided this weekend, and it just worked out really well.
It definitely has. And, there's a lot of people who do prefer college basketball to the NBA, and they talk about the single elimination aspect of the March Madness tournament. And I love the NBA. I've always preferred the NBA to college basketball personally. And I do love the series, the epic series we have, and I think that worked out great for our NBA Jam tournament and our Live 10 tournament. But this has really changed things up, bringing that single elimination into the video game tournament as in real life. I mean, obviously it apes the real March Madness tournament, so it's accurate as well. But there is that excitement, I have to admit, with that single game elimination.
Oh, absolutely. Win or go home always makes games more epic, right?
Definitely. Every game's a game 7.
You don't have another chance. Right, yeah, exactly. You don't have another chance. So I think that another bonus to that is it's allowed us to have more people participate in the tournament, right? There's no way that I would have been able to do 16 participants with, 7-game series going the whole way. So, 16 different people all having a good time. Even if they get knocked out in the first round, they're just happy to be a part of it and happy to take part in the action. And I just want to thank everybody who's participating in the tournament if you're listening to the podcast. And, thanks for not only being great sports, but, supplying great action for the community.
Absolutely, and you've done a great job putting together those videos, which you can find on the NLSC YouTube channel. We've got a whole playlist there with the tournaments. We do that for all of our tournaments. So that of course, is powered by Parsec, the wonderful app we've talked about on the podcast so often because we love it so much. Although you and I haven't had an opportunity to connect this week, but you got on there with some other people, NBA Live Girl, Nate Stasho, as you said, and again, just another fun week of basketball gaming.
Yeah, I want to go over a few of the sessions that I had because they were super exciting and all incredibly fun. So I actually streamed NBA Street Volume 2 with our friend from the NLSC and the NLSC Discord per DXDO. And I streamed for, I think it was about an hour. And what I'm going to do with the community is beat the NBA Challenge mode. So I'm going to pick different people in the community. They're going to jump on with me. I'm going to stream the action, and we're going to go through the entire NBA Street Challenge and NBA Challenge mode. So we played, I want to say 4 or 5 games. We're using the Lakers just to, have super a super amount of fun with it. I'm locked on Kobe. He's on Shaq. He was on Shaq, and we had Ori as our third player. And so many great highlights came from that action. He was a really good teammate once he remembered how to jump for alley-oops. He had never played co-op with somebody on that game. He's always just played himself against the CPU. But it was such a great session, and we had a bunch of people tune in to the stream. King J Mace jumped in. NBA Live Girl was in there. Nader was in there. There's multiple people, Ball Pundit. It was just a really fun stream. So thank you for tuning into the stream. And just to let you guys know, I'm looking for people to help me complete that NBA Challenge mode on NBA Street Volume 2. So if you're interested in jumping on with me, reach out.
Well, I'll put my hand up here, obviously. I'll be keen to get back on Street Volume 2.
Yeah, and you and I had a great session when we were using the old school team, and you were on Jordan and I was on Magic, and I thought we played incredibly well together. So you and I will have to stream that sometime. One of the other sessions that I had, and this was last night, I actually had like a 2-hour session with NBA Live Girl. And the biggest reason why I had such a long session with her is we were playing different games, and I wanted to show her how Parsec worked, and, just to have her experience like a full session, connected with the host. And she was excellent on NBA Live 10 and NCAA Basketball 10 and on NBA 2K10. And it was just really fun to play with her. We played all the games head to head. And yeah, she said it worked great for her. We're trying to set up her hosting and make that work correctly because she's on a Mac. And while it gives her the option to host, it has trouble recognizing the client's gamepad. So we're trying to work through that. But as far as a client, she's on Wi-Fi, but it still works great for her. And we're going to have so many more sessions in the future. And she's keen also to come on to a stream as well. So if I stream Street Volume 2, if I stream Jam OFE, or if I stream, NBA Live 10 or NCAA Basketball 10, she'd love to play and be on that stream. So that session went incredibly well. And then today, after Nate played and won his College Hoops 2K8 game, his tournament game, him and I connected on NBA Live 2001. And we played on the same team. We were the Magic. So Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, Daryl Armstrong, Pat Garrity, etc. And we played against the Miami Heat. So I'm going to specifically talk about the second game that we played because the first one was kind of a warm-up. We did play it on Superstar. And we ended up blowing out the computer on Superstar, which was a really good feeling. And we won by, I think, 16 or 17, but it would have been by probably 30 if we weren't screwing around in the fourth quarter trying to make highlights. But we had 2 alley-oops in that game. One he threw to me when I was being T-Mac, and one I threw to him when he was being Grant Hill, that are easily top 10 worthy plays. And he said that they were the best alley-oops that he's ever seen with, user and user co-op. And those highlights are up on my YouTube, actually, on D for free, the full game highlights. But go check those out because this was an outstanding session with Nate. We really figured out how to play together, in the second game. And it was a blast.
Between Parsec sessions and NBA 2K14 my career, which of course is ongoing, I've just reached the finals, I haven't really felt like picking up NBA 2K22. And obviously, a lot of people are still playing it because we're getting those great highlights in the top 10 from people who are playing 2K22. But I am seeing some sentiment that people aren't playing it as much or as enthusiastically as in the past, at least around our way. And, I mean, obviously we have the 2K22 modding on PC, but we don't see as much. I'm seeing more people really reach that boiling point of frustration with 2K22. And for my part, I'm quite happy to be playing some old favorites.
Yeah, I think this is about the time where people are ready for the new game, right? We're heading into April soon, and the NBA 2K22 has been out now for a number of months. And I think that overall, we talked about 2K fatigue. I think that the gameplay gets stale a little bit faster today than it used to, right? So I definitely think that there's a breaking point for a lot of people, and then they start searching for something else to have fun with, whether it's another game genre, a different sport. A different sport video game. Maybe they're into RPGs or adventure games or whatever. I see one of the people that are on our Discord, he's constantly playing Crusader Kings, right? It's not a basketball game. But that's his break between, playing maybe the newer 2K or sports games, etc. So I think this is about the time where the fatigue kind of sets in and people, kind of move on. This is where it would be great to have another option, right?
Of course.
This would be where it's great to have multiple basketball video game options, some in the arcade space and some in the sim space. But remember I said to you at the end of last year I think it was the year-end podcast, where I said, I think that 2022 is going to be a unbelievable year for connecting with people on Parsec, and we're just going to be taking Parsec gaming to the next level. And boy, I wasn't wrong, because the amount of games that we've got into, Parsec community has really grown on Discord and on the NLSC, et cetera. The tournaments and all the videos and all the random connections, et cetera. It's surpassed even what I thought it was going to do.
Oh, you were spot on with that prediction, because people have just taken to Parsec much the same way we did. And you're right. There's more crossover with basketball gamers and the wider gaming community and other genres than perhaps people realize. And of course, Elden Ring has come out. That's very popular right now, and that's a game where there's no microtransactions or anything else. None of the frustrations of an NBA 2K. So I've seen a lot of people in the basketball gaming community, yourself included, take to Elden Ring.
Yeah, Elden Ring's been great. See, I would never play Elden Ring by myself. The reason why I play games like that is because my brother Nick loves games like that, right? And we have a setup. I've shown a picture of it before, but we have a setup where we have our TVs right next to each other and our computers right next to each other. So games like Elden Ring, which have online co-op or like they're massive multiplayer games, him and I can just play in the same room together and connect on those games. So like he's connecting and playing Elden Ring on his own TV. I'm playing it on my TV, but we're playing in the same world, right? So there's games like Elden Ring and Conan Exiles and Remnant from the Ashes and stuff like that my brother and I get into. And you know what? It is a nice break sometimes, because I'm doing so much basketball gaming, and it doesn't really get old to do basketball gaming, but it is nice to have some other stuff that I'm into video game wise, like genre wise. And we have a lot of fun progressing on those games. And, I wouldn't change that for the world. Like we have a blast.
Well, I think it's also important to be able to change it up so things don't get stale, so you can have that fresh experience, so that you can enjoy other games. But as far as basketball gaming is concerned, I think it is very important to have those other interests and to play those other games. Because if you're only playing basketball games, you can get stuck in kind of a bubble where you forget that, games don't have to be this way. You don't have to have a horrible grind to enjoy a game. You don't need microtransactions to enjoy a game. And of course, it's very difficult to find a game without recurrent revenue mechanics these days, obviously. But when you play these other games and you see other things that other developers are doing to create a fun experience, it gives you more perspective for basketball games as well, I feel.
Well, the two streams that I've done recently, the lengthy streams, were on NBA Jam on Fire Edition and that was with you, and NBA Street Volume 2 with PerDXDO. And if you look at the live chat, it's up on both. You do have people in there saying, can you believe that we don't have another game like this today? Can you believe they're not making games like these anymore? Wouldn't it be great to have an option like this? And they're like, what was your favorite arcade basketball game from the past, and were you into and one street ball, etc. They're bringing up all these different titles, but they understand, the people that join my streams and whatnot, they get into the live chat, they understand the importance of options. They understand the importance of having a game like Jam, and then having a game like Street, then having a game like Live, and then having a game like 2K, and having those different gaming options and in different types of styles of basketball games that keep things interesting and keep people having fun.
No, it speaks to the importance of having the options, that competition. So as always, we hope to see it return. Now, a game that made it into the top 10 this week, Slam City with Scottie Pippen. There's an interesting one.
So, I have a Sega CD. And I don't boot up it's collected dust. I have, it's like sitting in my room, but I have Sega CD and Slam City, and I had that growing up as well. So I was like, I'm going to throw on Slam City on the emulator. So I threw it on, and I went up against Mad Dog. I loaded up that disc, and I got to tell you something. He kicked my butt. If you look at the score on that game, I was down 4-0, I think, when I made that basket. I think I lost that game. I think I only scored like 3 points. He's really tough. I got to get back into understanding the mechanics of that game and how to score and how to better play defense. But yeah, I revisit Slam City, and it never gets old revisiting that game. I know people knock it. They're like, oh, well, it's a quick time event. I think you've said, oh, well, it's a quick time event, which isn't inaccurate. But yeah, it's so cheesy. It's the epitome of 90s cheese as far as like the acting and the style and all of that stuff. It just screams my youth, really. And so it's really fun to put on, even just basically for that reason. But I think the mechanics are really interesting. I think that the way they did the video, like you're playing in real life like a video, I think they did a good job of that, given the resources that they had and what they were trying to do. And I'm going to try to get to Scottie Pippen like I did when I was younger. So I'm going to try to, beat the ballers before him and then face Scottie.
It really is a very 90s game, which makes sense. It came out in the 90s, obviously. But you're right, it really does epitomise that style and that the sense of humour with some of the cutscenes. And look, from a gameplay perspective, I mean, it's not the best. It's not as in-depth as other games because it is a series of quick-time events. But it's also very creative in how they did that. And I think there's still value in the game. I picked it up on PC, so I've played it as well. And yeah, no, I think it is a very interesting game. And when you say interesting, when I say interesting, it comes across as a bit of a backhanded compliment. But look, that's what people were doing. That's what developers were doing in the 90s. Because the technology at the time didn't allow for what we have today. So actually getting some video in there and being able to interact with that, it was a fun gimmick.
Listen, I will say it again, and I've said it on so many podcasts prior. I love Sewer Shark. Not all Sega CD games were terrible. I liked Slam City and I liked Sewer Shark. Sewer Shark I beat again recently. It's an enjoyable game. I love the graphics on Sewer Shark. The presentation, the cheesy acting. I enjoy it. And I just want to say once again, I brought this up earlier, the NBA Live 2001 game. Do you know how good it felt for us and I talked to him about it via text, how good it felt to beat the computer in such a big way on Superstar? There's something great about beating the computer on the highest difficulty, right? Like, you didn't take any shortcuts. You didn't turn off any rules. None of that stuff. You're like, straight up, I'm playing the computer on the hardest difficulty. And the thing with the computer on the hardest difficulty in most games is it makes them have an advantage over the user, right? In many different aspects. Like, if you put NBA 2K22 on Hall of Fame and you look at the way the sliders are, you have a shooting disadvantage, a defensive disadvantage, an offensive awareness disadvantage, etc. So when you beat a game on the hardest level, it's like, screw you. You had the advantage in most ways, and I still kicked your butt. So it's so much fun to beat the computer on the hardest level, but then also beating it co-op with a friend. It doesn't get much better than that. So we really enjoyed that experience. And like I said, please check out those highlights on my YouTube because I thought they came out great.
You bring up the sliders, and that is something we have those access to the game mechanics and being able to make adjustments to the gameplay these days. But those were the same adjustments that were happening under the hood back in the day. And 2001, when you ratchet that up to Superstar, the way that the difficulty you have making jump shots, easy jump shots, yeah, it is very satisfying to beat the CPU on All-Star, but certainly Superstar as well.
Defense, like Nate said, he was texting me, he was like, the defense is super aggressive on Superstar and NBA Live 2001. If you make, I don't know, if you brush by a defender, like, the ball often gets jarred, like it just falls out of your hand and they head the other way. If you think you're going to shake the computer with any dribble move, like any spin move or crossover, yeah, good luck, because you're either going to get a charging foul or the ball is going to come loose and they're going to head the other way. They're not as strong offensively on Superstar as I expected them to be, but defensively, they're a pain in the butt. The way that we ended up beating them is being patient, getting Grant Hill in the post, getting T-Mac in the post, even using guys like John Amici in the post, etc., doing little hook shots, but then also rebounding, outletting, using icon passing, and just really putting the pressure on on the fast break. But yeah, it just felt great. I think we were up by like 18 or something like that, or 18 or 19 at the end of the third quarter on Superstar in only 6-minute quarters. And it's like, this is fun. And I told him, I said through text, I was like, I wouldn't be opposed to starting like a co-op season on this game because that was a blast.
Patience really does pay off. And you see it in real life as well. I mean, there are furious rallies, obviously, that can be miraculous and you pull out the victory that way. But when you are down, and that is a mistake I know I made a lot as a kid, was playing basketball games, was to try and rush back and fire up threes and whatnot, and not be patient, not just chip away at the lead. And we've done that with some of the co-op games that we've played as well. Had some great comeback victories just being patient, just taking it one play at a time, get a stop, get a bucket, get a stop, get a bucket. And you do end up having this really satisfying comeback victory because you've just been patient, strategic, and when it pays off, so rewarding.
Yeah, I do want to say something, too, that I thought was pretty funny. So Stildo 33 was having his game against Brent Lane, and he was Purdue. So Stildo was Purdue, and he was against Brent Lane, who had Memphis. So a little bit of an advantage team-wise for Brent. Stildo was up by about double figure. I want to say he was up by about 10 or 12 points in the first half of that game. He was really mixing it up. He's hitting threes. He's in the post. He's putting the pressure on the defense. He's rebounding and outletting. He's beating the press the right way. We get into the second half and he changed his play style so much. It was really odd. Now I'm texting him during this game because I'm watching it and I'm like, dude, why'd you change your play style? And he kind of admitted that he kind of blew it in the second half. But I'm really enjoying the closeness of this community right now. I don't know, for the lack of a better word, getting, texting Nate, texting Ken, Stildo 33, etc. Talking with NBA Live Girl on Twitter and having a long session, all of that stuff. Parsec has been so great at helping us bring the community together. But the reason why I brought that Stildo game up where he changed his style in the second half, that's another thing that can really hurt you, right? You were talking about just jacking up threes at the end instead of being patient. If you change up your style of play when you're up, and then, that can basically, decide the game against you. Like it can go completely the wrong way. And that's what I think ended up happening with Stildo. But I know that I've done that on games before where I'm playing well, I'm up by 8 to 10 points and I'll switch a matchup for like no reason, like, a defensive matchup, or I'll, call a different defense or something like that. And then be like, oh crap, why did I do that? And I just caused a massive comeback and I lost the game. And that actually happened when I played NBA 2K19 against Stildo this week, and he hosted. I used the Suns. We were playing the 94-95 roster that's just going to be released soon for 2K19. He used the 94-95 Magic, who he's going to use in our My League when we start that. And I want to say, up at the end of the third quarter by 2 points or something like that, or it was tied. And then all of a sudden, for no reason, and I was up also like 6 to 8 points too in the third quarter at one point. All of a sudden, the start of the fourth quarter, for no reason, I put Dan Marley on Penny Hardaway and Kevin Johnson on Dennis Scott, even though Penny Hardaway wasn't killing me in this game. And Stildo proceeded to pick me apart and exploit that mismatch with Dennis Scott, being guarded by Kevin Johnson. And I ended up losing the game against him mostly as a result of an adjustment that I didn't need to make. Right. So it's almost like overthinking and over adjusting for no reason can burn you.
It's one of those things that will allow a game to slip away. One of the other ones that I've noticed, especially in my career, where it's really about padding stats and whatnot, is going for stats. Sometimes focusing on that will take your eye off the prize, and you stop focusing on making the plays you need to win because you're making the plays you need to get the stats. And so when I'm going for big assist numbers or trying to score points or trying to get the triple-double in my career, because I've averaged the triple-double throughout the playoffs and throughout the regular season in this year 2 of my career in 2K14, when I focus too much on getting stats, I notice that's when the CPU is sticking around.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Now, I didn't do that with Stildo. We actually were playing pretty hard for the whole game and not even thinking about that. Shaq still ended up with 38 points and 12 rebounds and absolutely destroyed me. I mean, granted, he was being guarded by Joe Klein and Wayman Tisdale, for the majority of the game, and that hurt. The Suns weren't exactly strong at center. But no, I've said that before. I've beat people in games, including one of my brothers, when it was pretty obvious that they were going for stats and going to a certain player in order to get points. And I exploited that, made sure I covered that player. And, I would end up winning the game. So, yeah, going for stats can definitely cause losses.
That being said, I have swept my way through to the finals and took game 1 against the Nuggets. So some unusual and unexpected teams making the finals in 2015 in this my career.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say another thing that I thought was cool too is I just recently, because she joined my stream unexpectedly, NBA Live Girl. I was talking to her a little bit while we were having our session, and she's very much like me as far as those mid to late 2000 Nuggets. You know how I love those. Nuggets.
Oh yes, very much one of your favorite squads. That's not wearing green, although they do have a green jersey. They do have the Green Day jersey.
Right, yeah. You love those alternate jerseys.
I do.
You do. You're all about the alternate jerseys. If anybody connects with Andrew, just fully expect him to search out his favorite alternate jersey whenever he does a matchup with you, because he will not use the regular jersey.
It's funny because I'm such an opponent of all the different jerseys these days and not having the traditional designations of home and away in the real NBA these days. I don't like the new nomenclature and how it seems like teams very rarely wear their icon and association jerseys. There's always one of the alternates. But when I go back to those old games, I have to seek out an alternate because I think they had some great alternate designs at the time.
Yeah, I would put money on Andrew selecting the Dallas Mavericks trash bag jerseys if him and I connected and those were in the game.
100%.
Those trash bag jerseys. I didn't think they looked that bad, but they are considered one of the ugliest jerseys that have ever, hit the NBA. But yeah, no, I was talking to her and she was saying that her go-to team in all those mid to late 2000s, NBA Lives and NBA 2Ks was the Nuggets, just like me. So she put the Nuggets on the floor immediately against me on NBA Live 10. So I was like, oh crap, now I got to choose a different team. So I chose the Hornets. I remember I won the NBA Live 10 tournament with the Nuggets because I love that team. I'm more of a fan of the Iverson Nuggets, Iverson, J.R. Smith, Carmelo Anthony, Kenyon Martin, and Camby. But the Billups Nuggets I'm still a fan of as well. So yeah, no, I thought that was cool too. And that's what's cool about connecting with the community is you realize how much in common you have with so many people. Like you and I talked about it after the episode that we had with Stildo 33 when he was on the show, and we were talking about how much we have in common with him as a gamer, not just our ages, but our gaming habits and the stuff that we're into and retro NBA and retro gaming, etc. It's just really cool.
It is, and I like how it's brought us closer with Parsec and how it's instilled that sense of community, because we had that in the early days in our community. We were a bit smaller. Everyone kind of knew everybody else in the forum. We were talking on MSN Messenger back in the day. So there was a lot of connections there that were outside the forum and within the forum, and you kind of were sort of friendly with everybody like that. And which is not to say our community is unfriendly, because we do everything we can to make the community as friendly as possible. And we're not about toxicity, and that's what I love about our community. But when we were a bit smaller, you had those connections. So Parsec's kind of bringing that back. Plus you've got that central chat, obviously, with the whole community. So that's really cool to see. As I said, we haven't connected with Parsec this week, you and I, but we will have to do that soon because I do need to show you how to set up a few retro games.
Yeah, I got the package. I posted this on Twitter. I posted the pictures of it. Andrew, the shipping was expensive. I paid for the shipping, and you know why I paid for the shipping? Because Andrew shouldn't have to cover that big of a cost. That's ridiculous. He's sending me games. We had to ship a bunch of games from Australia to New Hampshire, USA. So I lived about an hour outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And all the games came in great shape. You did a great job of wrapping the games and making sure they were secure, etc. I got NBA Live 2004, and these are all PC. NBA Live 2004, NBA Live 2001, Live 2000. Was Live 2000 in there?
No, that's one you bought. I gave you 98 and 99.
It was Live. Yeah, it was Live 2000, Live 99, Live 98, Live 97, Live 96, and Live 95, and then also Michael Jordan in flight, and a Logitech controller for the PC. So thank you for sending those to me. They all came in great shape. We're going to have to get those set up on my PC so I can host them to other people. And like I said, that's one of the best things about Parsec, isn't it? It's the fact that the person that connects with you doesn't have to own the game. All they got to do is have a controller plugged into their PC. So if I boot up the PC version of NBA Live 96, then somebody who doesn't own the game, who might be interested in it, or maybe they don't want to own it, maybe they just want to connect for one time, but somebody who doesn't own the game can just connect with me and enjoy that game, and they can tell their friends, hey, I played NBA Live 96 for the PC. So yeah, I thank you for sending those games, but yeah, that's another great feature of Parsec.
It is, and of course you're welcome. I was happy to do that and help you expand your collection. The Logitech controller is great for those games that have the old D input as opposed to the X input. So for retro gaming, you just flick that switch on the top, and it's a great retro gaming controller. Which is why I wanted to send that along, because for 2003, 2004, and even 2005 to 08, prefer that D input, and it makes sure all the triggers work when you have that the 4 triggers on the top. So that's why I wanted to send that along, so that we could have some great sessions with those games, and again, to expand your collection. And yeah, as far as Parsec, it's like I've said before, it's like going around to somebody's house and playing a game that you don't own, or borrowing a game from a friend. So it's brought that in a virtual sense to our gaming.
100%. I also want to let people know. So you people have realized probably by now that Andrew's a writer. Like, he does multiple articles every week. They're detailed. You love writing.
I do.
And I'm more of like the video guy. Like, I'm like more of the, I send Andrew videos for the NLSC channel, YouTube channel, etc. I'm constantly recording. I'm constantly using Movavi, etc. But just to tell you how much of a writer Andrew is, he couldn't just send me the games. Like, it couldn't be just, oh, look, I got these games from Andrew. He had to leave a novel long note. And I really appreciated it. You put a lot of kind words in there. You customized that experience of me receiving these games. But yeah, Andrew is a writer through and through. Trust me. Like, if Andrew ever Andrew likes you and he ever sends anything to you, trust that you will get a long note with it.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. If I'm sending a present to a friend, or doing a card for a wedding or engagement or something, I'm probably the one writing the long note. Absolutely.
Right. You must hate the Twitter character limit.
I often go through multiple reconfigurations if I'm talking about something on Twitter, just to get it under that character limit, or doing a thread. Yeah, it's the character limit is not my friend.
Yeah, I can't stand it. I hate making a thread and then having to add multiple comments underneath to get my point across. Because, as you know, in the short attention span generation, and with people not having as much time, oftentimes people only look at the first tweet, and they won't look at the tweets underneath it. But again, so, to wrap that up, thank you so much for sending those over to me. My basketball gaming collection somehow gets even bigger. And, I plan on trying to collect every basketball game ever made.
No, yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. And I was happy to do that for you. Obviously happy to have you as part of the team, and playing these games with you has been a lot of fun. Looking forward to helping you set those up on Parsec, and I will be putting together some resources to help people to retro game with those games, because we do have some guides out there. Matt's Classic Games Fixes has been great for that, so I want to credit him for any information that I share on that front, because he pioneered a lot of that and shared that with our community originally. I have uploaded a lot of fixes to the download section. Going to have a bit of a retro gaming section in the download section to help with resources, DOSBox configurations, the fixes, the fixed executables for running games on Windows 10, because the safe disk driver has been removed from Windows, and you can reactivate it in Windows 7, but it does have a security risk to that. This is a much better way of doing it. So Windows 7, 8.1, and 10, these fixes will help you run those games. Some DOSBox guides as well. Just some step-by-step to get those all set up. Because I think there's a lot of people who do want to revisit those games, but unfortunately new Windows doesn't have that compatibility, Derek, which is a shame. And Windows 11 is apparently even worse with it, even for games like 2K11 and 12. So that's disappointing.
Hey, we've had some of those old games get into the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week.
Definitely.
Remember, we've had Live 96 in there and whatnot when you have hosted. And then, I believe we had Live 99 in there with a couple Brent Berry dunks from you, etc. When you hosted the PC version of it. I think that people do enjoy going back and playing those games, and some people do it for the same reason I do. I think, to see what were they thinking at the time. Trying to use the mechanics for what they are in order to, enjoy it for what they are, etc. Like, I think that there's a lot of people out there that love retro gaming for those reasons.
And that's why we'll always support the retro modding community as well. And you and I have obviously made some releases for older games. The 2K19, which is not an old game, but it is no longer supported. The servers have been shut down. You've got the Great Retro Season projects that you were also a contributor to. Again, headed up by Stildo33, and the 94-95 roster being in the pipeline and close to release, which is great news. Classic season, obviously, in the 90s there. A very memorable season with MJ making his comeback midway through the season. First comeback, that is. And I've actually been working on a 2K10 roster of my own. Not a current roster or a retro roster as such, Derek, but just one that takes the final 2010 season rosters and adds some missing legends, and also fixes the legend ratings, because I was going through the original legends in that roster, Derek, and man, those inaccuracies and the copy and paste ratings, that was way before recent games. That's been going on for a while.
So Andrew and I really haven't talked about this. I didn't know he was really doing this on NBA 2K10, and we haven't even talked about those ratings. So I'm curious, can you give me a couple examples of an area where a player was incredibly underdone or wrong?
Well, let me put it this way. Now, overall ratings are kind of overrated, in a sense, because it's about the individual ratings. But when the overall looks really wrong, like very high or very low, it's usually a sign that there's some inaccuracies. And you go in and you can see just how many inaccuracies there are. Now, pretty much every legend player in NBA 2K10 has 99 for inside. What's the rating? Is the close field? Is it close shot?
Yeah, I believe that's in 2K10. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the two close to the basket, close range, and under the basket shooting ratings. All of them have 99 for one and 86 for the other. Every one of them. So they've just copied and pasted them.
See, they were doing that back then too.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some ball handling ratings that are very low, passing ratings, things like that. And it's not even been done to really make it more accurate overall, I think, because a lot of those legends are very underrated. You've got Magic Johnson in the 80s. He should be one of the top-rated players in the game, to say the very least. So there's a lot of inaccuracies like that. Some blocking and stealing ratings that are, when you go back and you look at the stats, it's, well, what did you base this on? And a lot of ratings that are just at 25 for no reason. I think Larry Bird, even though he wasn't the quickest player on the court, obviously, infamously, can't run, can't jump, as the scouting report said back in the day. I mean, that's just compared to other NBA players, of course. He is still an above-average athlete, and that's what people don't realize. But again, he was something like speed in the 30s, which is, that's a bit too slow. And other ratings like that are just, how did you come up with this? And so many that are just the same copy and paste. Everyone's got 99 for consistency, which, I mean, those legends were pretty consistent, but it's just so lazy. You can see they've just copied and pasted so many ratings, including that 99 and 86 for the close shooting ratings that, yeah, when I saw that, I said, okay, I'm not just going to add those missing legends to the all-decade teams, I'm going to fix them up as well. And just put that out there. And look, I know that's not a huge project, it's not a retro roster, it's certainly not a current roster update, but it's just one of those things that if you want to go back and play 2K10, you can have those final rosters with some missing legends and just have some more fun with that. And I'm looking forward to putting that out there, because it's, I've made some pretty good progress over the weekend. There's just, I think, the 70s teams I have to do, and then there's a couple more players I need to add, Anthony Hardaway and maybe Latrell Sprewell I'd like to add as well. So that's pretty close to completion. It's a smaller project, but I'm looking forward to putting it out there because, again, those ratings were just... that issue just goes back further than we even thought.
I think some of it is them not knowing their history, and then some is just laziness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that the Larry Bird speed rating is just not knowing their history. I don't think that has to do that may not even have to do with laziness. I guess you could call it laziness if they weren't willing to look up highlights or look up full games of that player, etc. But, I said the same thing about Dirk Nowitzki, the 0203 version, where they made him just an absolute complete slug with his speed with ball in the newest NBA 2Ks. And it's like, have you actually ever watched early 2000s Dirk? I have commentary from what from I think it's like an 01-02 game or 02-03 game, where I was watching the full game and they were talking about him being one of the most athletic big men in the league at that point, as far as like getting up and down the floor, as far as pushing the ball. They were talking about him as a point forward, about sticking him as like a point forward, etc. But NBA 2K makes him an absolute slug with the ball. And I think that's a combination of not knowing their history and and just being lazy as well, like not watching the tape, etc. But that's another case too of minimalist modding, which you love, right? You were talking about that, where it doesn't need to be some huge project. It can be fixes to in-game assets or an in-game default roster, etc. And that can still be a game changer for a lot of people, and a lot of people may want to download that roster and use those players, now that they're accurate on the floor, etc. So no, I think it's cool that you're doing that.
I mean, that's definitely my hope, because there is interest in 2K10 still, as there is 2K11. So just putting out something small like that fixes those issues and adds some missing players to the retro content that they had at the time. Yeah, I think there's value in that. It's something that I've really enjoyed doing. I mean, I've always been a current roster guy, and I'd still love to do some current roster work, but that takes longer to do. Obviously, those current roster projects, and a lot of things can get in the way of all that work. So this is a quicker project, obviously, and also focusing on the retro. And you brought this up before because you were surprised that I was trying to do some current roster updates when I'm not as enthusiastic about the current product as back in the day. And this really appeals to my nostalgia of adding those players and working on some retro rosters. So I think this has been good for me to get really back into that swing of modding, to work on something that I can be a bit more passionate about, and then move on to some other more ambitious projects.
Yeah, I think that doing that, I'm not saying it's like a mistake overall, but that NBA 2K11 roster that you were working on, like trying to update it to current day, I'm like, is this really Andrew? This roster? Like, that's the way I felt about it, because I know how you are about retro, right? I know how you are about classic seasons. I know how you are about the 90s. I know how you are about the legends, all of that stuff. And I know how you feel about today's game. So I think that going into that project, it's possible you had the mindset that you were going to do this for the community.
Yes, I was going to say, yes, it's a community
more for the community than yourself, right? So I think it's a noble thing, an unselfish thing to do. But if you do something like that, you're not going to have the same passion for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's going to take a lot longer to finish, or you're not going to finish it. And that's what I've learned. And that's why, on the newer 2Ks, where there's been like an option to maybe, get more clicks or get more exposure, or, maybe help the community as far as like creating new mods, a new like big roster mod, etc. I haven't liked the games enough in order to pursue a huge project like I did on NBA 2K17. So instead of forcing it and then not finishing the project or taking forever to release it, I said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. So I had a feeling when you were talking about that NBA 2K11 roster project, updating it to new, I had a feeling that it was either not going to finish or it was going to be something that got dragged out. And I don't think that's because you don't have the capability of doing it, because you're a great modder. I don't think it has anything to do with you not wanting to do it for the community either. I think it's not a passion project, and that's tough.
Exactly. I mean, it's not something that I'm cancelling, but there are a couple of other 2K11 current roster updates that have come through. You can check them out in the 2K11 modding section. And the fact that other people have been able to do that as well and put that out there for the community, I think there's been less incentive because it's kind of like, well, I've been beaten to the punch on this big project, which is not their fault. They got it done, and that's awesome. But and that's something out there for the community, so it's not something I'm being relied upon. But then, of course, being relied upon that can put that pressure on there. And if you're already doing it not so much for yourself but for the community, yeah, absolutely. The mindset with modding is so important, because if you are doing it for the wrong reasons, whether it's for fame, for money, for clout, whatever you want to say, or just to have that, just to do it kind of thing. just putting it out there for the community, as you said. If you're not making something that you would want to play with, it's much harder to really get invested in that. So that has, it's kind of a mistake, or kind of a misstep, or a miscalculation on my part for sure. But I am getting back into it with a little bit of these smaller projects here and there, and we'll see what happens with some bigger projects. But stay tuned for that, and also the 2K19 retro rosters.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait to start my season with Stildo 33, Ken, on NBA 2K19, 90, using the 94-95 roster. And you and I are going to have to connect on that game and use that roster because, you find that to be a special season, as do I. We like a lot of the teams and the players and stuff, and we could have a lot of great games.
Well, I mean, 95-96 is the season that I really got into basketball. But it started in that 94-95 season because, of course, you had MJ coming back. That generated a lot of interest here in Australia. We were starting to get more coverage on TV, more accessible magazines. Also our own league, the NBL, was in a golden era of its own. It's been making a comeback in recent years, which has been great to see, obviously. But basketball was just so huge in the 90s and really took off in the mid-90s like that. So a lot of nostalgia for 94-95 as well. And, of course, NBA Live 95, my first NBA Live game, set in the 94-95 season, or PC version anyway. So, yeah, just so much nostalgia wrapped up with that. So I'll definitely jump on Parsec and play that when it comes out, because there's so much detail has gone into those mods, the accuracy of it, right down to the All-Star courts, the All-Star jerseys, all the care that's been taken with the player ratings. Again, this is why I wanted to fix the 2K10 Legends, because having that accuracy, it's important. You want the players to play right in a sim game.
And that's probably the best compliment that my brother and I received on the NBA 2K17 rosters.
Yes.
The fantasy roster, the classic, especially the classic teams roster that we put together. And you looked through that and you loved it as well. But it was they were talking about the gameplay and how the players, the signatures were right and how it was enjoyable to put the different teams on the floor and all of that stuff. And that meant the most to my brother and I. Because it was like, all right, so you're putting these teams on the floor and it's not just, hey, look, the jerseys are accurate and the court's accurate. It's, we're having fun with this game and the gameplay because of the work on the, the signatures and the tendencies and the ratings and all of that stuff. So that was definitely the biggest compliment that we got on those rosters.
And of course, while there is modding on the consoles, especially with some of the features, the editing features they have in games these days, it has always been the domain, really, of the PC version. And you and I are... We're not PC elitists, in so much as that we completely dismiss console gaming, because you and I both own consoles and have owned consoles throughout the years. As you mentioned, you had a Sega CD back in the day, and still have that in your collection. But PC gaming has been a big part of what we do in the community because of the modding scene. And you put out the question this week about people's setups.
I find it fascinating how people play these games and, what their setup could possibly be. Are they using a Logitech like you had sent me? Are they using, a PS4 or PS5 controller? Are they using an Xbox controller? Are they playing on a monitor? Are they playing on a TV? And I wanted to get, a pulse on how people were playing their basketball video games. And we definitely got a lot of responses in a short period of time, because I just put that question out this afternoon. But, I was curious before we move on to people's answers, how do you play?
Well, I've got a very simple setup, to be honest. I've got my desktop, my gaming desktop there, just connected to a monitor. It's only a 22-inch monitor, so I'm not actually playing on a TV. I do have HDMI out, obviously, on my video card. But when I got the computer custom built, they didn't really pay attention to the positioning of that HDMI port. It's actually behind part of the case, so I can't actually use the HDMI out. I have to use am I using DVI? And actually, I'm using VGA. So I'm kind of old school in that respect.
You're using VGA,
or possibly DVI. Because the HDMI port is behind part of the case. I looked at it and realized, they kind of built that wrong. But so that was a bit of a disappointment. But I might have to see if I can modify the case or something, or depending on what next time I upgrade, I'll certainly be making sure that is. That I can use HDMI out easily. I have the capability, but because the port is hidden, I can't actually get the cable in there. So that was a bit disappointing.
Okay, so you have a 22-inch monitor. You have a computer chair.
I do.
And what's your go-to for a controller?
So it depends on the games. I mean, basketball games, especially since the right stick dribbling came in, dual analog controls, I've had to have some kind of dual analog controller. Currently, I am using a Logitech wireless F710. It's been doing the job. I love it because, as I've said, it's the one I sent to you. It has the switch on top between D input and X input, so that if you're playing an old game and you need to have it recognize all the triggers with the D input, you just flick the switch. No need to use any kind of emulation or software hacks. So you just flick the switch back and forth depending if it's a new game or an old game, and it recognizes it perfectly. I've also got a Logitech keyboard and Logitech gaming mouse. The keyboard, of course, has that switch that disables the Windows key. It's got extra keys for macros, etc. So, and it's got the mute controls, and can also be used as a media keyboard. And the Logitech gaming mouse has the speed controls on it as well. For basketball games, yes, I use the controller because they're not meant for keyboard and mouse. Obviously, in fact, mouse controls aren't supported by, except for the menu controls, obviously aren't supported by current games. For something like Fallout, for example, or any kind of first-person shooter, I will be using a mouse and keyboard. Some retro games, I might use the keyboard for nostalgia as much as anything else, like a Commander Keen or something. But yeah, I'm using my controller a lot, basically.
Interesting. Like I know that sometimes when you connected with me on Parsec that you used a PS5 controller, correct? I do remember that, or PS4.
Yes, I tested that out to see if it would work, and it did. I think the PS5 controller works natively, so that was interesting.
Okay. I think the last game that I played with a keyboard and mouse was Alien versus Predator for the PC back when I was like in high school. That's how long it's
first person shooter. Yeah.
A game, right? I as far as like first person shooters today, I have no issues using a gamepad. Like Borderlands is technically it's a first person shooter. Borderlands 2. My brother and I beat both of those games together, and I use a controller. So I don't really have that big of a problem, but I understand why people might use a keyboard and mouse if they feel like it's more accurate for them and whatnot. So that's awesome. Your setup is probably more similar, I would say, to most people as far as like having that monitor in the computer chair and doing it that way.
Yeah, no, it is a very traditional setup of a computer desk and whatnot, and just the monitor. And again, if I can sort out that issue with the case and maybe modify it a little bit, I might be able to get that HDMI connection, and of course then I can hook it up to the TV if I choose. But I am using the TV for the consoles currently. But yeah, what's your setup like? Because you've got a pretty cool one. I've seen you share some photos with me, and also post some on Twitter. So yeah, you've kind of got that ultimate gaming experience with a couch.
Yeah, the setup is designed for comfort, really. So basically, we play our PC games like our console games, basically. The setup in the living room is I have my 50-inch TV, and the PC is connected via HDMI to the 50-inch TV, and I use an Xbox One wireless controller and play from my couch. And next to my TV is my brother's TV. So he has a 50-inch TV next to mine, and he has his computer on the other side. So he also uses an Xbox One wireless controller, and he plays from his couch on the other side. So that's my setup, and my TV works amazing for all the PC games. It's just really nice to play the games on a big screen, and it's really nice to not have to worry about a cord, right? So connected to my controller, it's nice to play it wirelessly and everything. And I couldn't have asked for a better setup. It works really great for me.
I'm envious of the comfort, because I've got a pretty comfy chair. Not to make a Monty Python reference there, but yeah, being able to play on a couch like that, and having the two TVs set up, it's kind of like an old school LAN gaming, almost a LAN party.
It really is. Like I said, we can play any online co-op game or online against game, right there in our living room. So if it doesn't support local play, but it supports online play, like a lot of the newer games, we can play any game.
And one thing I noticed about a lot of people's specs back in the day, the early 2000s really, a lot of people were playing on the family PC. And the family PC, it was just something that people got so they could be able to connect to the internet, do schoolwork, etc., a bit of email, etc., from the late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of people had systems that would allow gaming, but it wasn't as powerful as they perhaps thought it was, and a lot of times people were asking for, especially when the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 generation hit, people wanted that port to PC. And I remember when 2K came and was that port, whereas Live had continued to be a PS2 port up until it was discontinued on PC, and a lot of people found, even in the late 2000s, 2008, when 2K9 came to PC, people found out, my PC's actually not that good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that even 8, 9 year old PC now can, run NBA 2K9 on the PC. But like you had stated, if they had a PC from the early mid 2000s and they were trying to run NBA 2K9, then you might be in some trouble, and they might have to put it on the lowest settings, which really hurts the graphics, etc., in that visual appeal. They might be able to get it to work smooth, but are they going to accept that low quality graphics as a result? I remember, what was it? I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I thought it would be fun to use just a stock, like it was like a really cheap laptop. Let's be honest, it was like a $300 or $400 laptop, not a gaming laptop. It was designed for business. I decided to use that and install NBA 2K13 on it and play it, and much to my surprise, it worked basically perfect on medium settings on this non-gaming computer that is, was about, it was like 5 or 6 years ago. So you can be surprised the other way as well. Like, hey, wait, I didn't expect my computer to run this game that well. There was a gaming PC that we had. It was like a $500 PC that I ended up passing down to my brother. And it was running all of the PS4 titles on medium or high. And it was only like a $500 PC. So gaming PC. So, I try to tell people this, and you've seen me talk to people about this on Twitter. Don't think that you have to break the bank in order to have like a good PC gaming experience, because there are computers out there pre-built that are $500 or $600 that might satisfy your gaming, your gaming habits and your gaming needs.
Oh, definitely. Be a savvy consumer, as with anything. But it has come to a point where I think that people are a bit more aware of PC specs. And if you're a PC gamer, you're a bit more aware of what you need. You're probably going to get a gaming rig. You're going to look to future-proof it as much as possible. And yeah, so we don't run into some of those same issues where people had these very underpowered PCs. And I remember when I was first getting into IT, remember 2004, 2005, professionally as a job, that there were people that were coming with bringing in Windows XP machines that had 64 megabytes of RAM, which even for Windows XP was horrendously underpowered. And they used to make some of those home systems that were just for, not so much, they weren't for gaming, they were just your general family PC. They made them very underpowered. 64 megabytes. Again, you need at least 256 megabytes for Windows XP to run efficiently and not just chew up all the memory on basic functions. So they were putting out a lot of systems that were underpowered. That's become less of an issue over time. So even if you do get something like, as you say, just that pre-built machine, $500 or $600, you get a pretty good machine that can run mid-level games or even run games from the early 2010s maxed out, depending on the specs. If you want to play the latest and greatest games, you do need a newer rig that's got more power, more RAM, better video card, etc. But you can get away with, especially for retro gaming, with a kind of that mid-tier PC. Whereas back in the day, your mid-tier PCs are the ones that a lot of people seem to have in our community, at least, realize that it was not powerful enough to run those better games.
Well, it's not. I mean, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because I've had a little bit more experience with it as far as like the mid-level. So that $500 to $600 PC is still here, and it runs NBA 2K19 completely perfect on medium settings. This is a pre-built. Yeah, I think we got it from like Amazon. A pre-built CyberPower PC, I want to say it is, and it can run the newer titles. It can run the the I don't know, the Fallout 4. Like, it can run it on like medium settings.
Oh, sure.
So
I meant maxed out. I meant maxed out.
Right. Well, the thing is that consoles are not maxed out. That's what people need to understand. The
True.
reason why PC is so awesome is because you can enhance you can make the graphics better than what they are often on the console space, and you can have those graphics appear at a higher frame rate as well than what you get on consoles. So that's like the bonus. But most times, and I've read some articles on this, and I've talked to a few people about it who work on computers as well, is basically the console graphics in comparison to PC. Console is like medium on PC. So if you can run your games the majority of your games on medium on PC, it's like you're getting the console experience and sometimes with a better frame rate. And a good example of that is Horizon Zero Dawn. So Horizon Zero Dawn on the console hardly ever looks like it's at 60 FPS. It almost looks like it's always running between like 30 and 50 FPS. But you can get a completely smooth experience on Horizon Zero Dawn on PC on medium settings. So it looks like the console space, but it's also at like a much higher frame rate. Like it's much smoother. So that's really the biggest advantages is for PC, in my opinion, outside of modding. You know, if we're talking about like performance wise, it's getting the higher frame rates, whether it be sports titles or, you know, adventure games or RPGs, etc. And then also being able to elevate the graphics to something that console can achieve.
No, that's true. I suppose I was thinking it more of a newer mid-tier PC could play your 2K11s, your 2K12s maxed out these days, whereas back in the day, when those games were new, if you didn't really have that a system that was built for gaming, you would run into those issues trying to max out the game. That's what I was getting at.
100%. No, because I remember being younger and being on a PC that wasn't really made for gaming and trying to run NBA Live 2000 and having to put the settings on like low or something like that in order to achieve a decently smooth frame rate to enjoy the game. So I definitely agree with you there.
And funnily enough, trying to play Live 2001 and 2000 these days on a new on Windows 10, for example, using the workarounds I referred to earlier in the show, you do actually have to switch the textures, I think, to medium, using the N-Glide wrapper and the DG Voodoo hacks to simulate those old video cards. It still looks great. I've shown you some of the screenshots that I've taken, and you can hardly tell the difference, but you do have to change a couple of settings down low, so you don't get quite the same experiences on original hardware that's built for, that the game was designed for at the time. You mentioned wanting to get, we're talking about it off air. You mentioned being tempted of getting an old, like a Windows 95 or 98 PC for retro gaming, and I feel that same temptation because playing it on that original hardware, of course, then it's hard to get the capture that we can do on Windows 10 with all the software we have. But no, I feel that temptation of having a full retro PC. Absolutely.
I just want to see it boot up.
Yeah.
I want to have that nostalgic experience. I want to see it boot up. I want to see how slow it boots up. I want to see it get to the desktop. I want to see what Windows 95 looks like in front of me, like Windows 95 or Windows 98. Bring back those memories of me booting up those old computers because it was a big deal back then. Look at all the icons and all that stuff. It's kind of how I am about retro video games, right? Just putting it on and seeing like the different menus and the different art that was being used at the time and all of that stuff, the sign of the times, all of that stuff. So yeah, no, I have this weird thing about getting like an old Windows 95 or Windows 98 PC.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I use VMware mostly for that, and I've got a Windows 98 set up. I got a Windows 90. I actually installed DOS and Windows 3.1 on a virtual machine in VMware, so that was very nostalgic. But then I had to remember, how do I create folders in Windows 3.1? Because it's been over 20 years, been over 25 years since I used that Windows 3.1 with any kind of regularity. So yeah, I had to remind myself. DOS commands I remember. They're just burned into my mind. But yeah, it had been so long since I used the Windows 3.1 interface that I had to look around a bit.
Yeah, I would definitely have to become reacquainted with those old systems, but I'd probably figure it out pretty fast because I think some of that stuff is like in your brain. Like I don't think that I think once I see a part of it, the other stuff will come back.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the things that you're passionate about just stick there in your brain. I mean, I've mentioned on many shows before how I can still complete Donkey Kong Country 2 about 80% with all the bonus levels and that. Get about 80% completion on the first run through, just from memory alone, without having to look anything up. But ask me to tell you anything about high school maths, senior high school maths, I couldn't tell you a thing.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's the stuff that you love and that you're passionate about. That's the stuff that's going to stick with you the most.
Absolutely. So how about we open up the mailbag and see what setups people have.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So first up we have Cryptoclaptic on Twitter. Has a laptop hooked up through his 48-inch TV using a PlayStation 5 controller. And again, the The compatibility with those controllers from consoles, Derek, to just plug them in and have them recognized by Windows is a huge deal. It makes things so convenient.
Yeah, you hear it. You hear the beep when you plug in the controller in the USB, and it says installing the device, and you're up and running. Every now and then, if you're on a Mac, it gets a little bit more complicated. Like you have to download like an Xbox 360 control driver if you want to use an Xbox 360 control, or if you want to use a PlayStation controller, you got to download like a PlayStation driver, etc. But there's always a workaround, and there's always a way to get the controllers to work usually. I like the idea of that, he has a laptop, and then he's like, you know what, I want a bigger screen. So he hooks it up to his TV. That is actually something that I did and have memories of doing back when I was first getting back into PC gaming, and I downloaded the UBR on a laptop, and it was before I got my gaming desktop. And I wanted to see it on a big screen. So I hooked up my laptop to, at the time, I think it was a 42-inch TV or 44-inch TV. And I was viewing the UBR on it, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
And you mentioned laptops, and he brings up that he's playing on a laptop. That's also become more viable because they've become more powerful. And, of course, there are gaming laptops that are quite expensive, but even you get some pretty decent ones, maybe not mid-tier, but somewhere in between that and the ultimate gaming laptop. And that's viable now. Back in the day, they were very underpowered as well, but they have become viable gaming machines because a lot of people like to take their gaming, on the go.
Yeah, I would say that the one big drawback of gaming on a laptop is overheating. I think that they overheat a little bit too easily, and I think that's the biggest challenge that people have. As far as performance, there's a lot of great laptops out there. I even want to say that Nate Stasho, the NBA Live 2001 legend, that when him and I connect on Parsec, I believe he's connecting with me on a gaming laptop, and that's how we're having our session. So that's pretty cool.
And of course, as you mentioned, a couple of people using Macs as well, B-Ball Video Games, NBA Live Goal, the compatibility of Parsec and what we've been able to do, still working a few things out with the controller, as you said, but no, that's awesome. I mean, you don't even have to you can do PC to Mac.
Right, exactly. And, in Mac, the hosting aspect of Mac with Parsec, they're still fine-tuning it and everything, but it definitely works. Like I could see her screen, it looked great, etc. It's just getting a control to work and to be recognized on her end. So we're going to figure that out.
Next up, we have TG So Good. TG So Good on Twitter and in our forum, of course, has a desktop, 2 monitors, and using an Xbox controller.
The 2-monitor setup is very interesting to me because I'm not a fan of it, but I can see the benefit of it, especially if you want to use both monitors for the same game, like go like super widescreen. If you didn't have like a widescreen monitor, like combine them. I know that Manny Live has a super widescreen monitor, and his highlights look different as a result when he submits them for the top 10 plays of the week, because when he's recording them, they're in a different resolution, right? They're in a different widescreen resolution. But the 2-monitor setup is just something I was never a fan of, but I see the benefits of it. He's using an Xbox controller. He didn't expand on that. I don't know if he's wireless or wired. I'm going to assume that he's wireless, and that he's using Xbox One like me.
And of course, the goods is a modder as well. So having the 2 monitors set up, you can have the game on one and maybe refer to be working on something on the second monitor, or maybe for rosters, for example, have Basketball Reference up on one screen and be editing on the other. So that's convenient too.
It also helps for streaming. Like,
yes.
You can drag things on and off screen, etc. And I've tuned into a few of his screens, and I believe I've seen him do that, where he drags like a window off screen, or drags like a folder or something he's modding or something like that. He drags it off screen, and then on the screen that's streaming, that's he keeps that what it is. But yeah, no, there's definitely benefits to it.
And checking out the chat in the stream as well, things like that. There's convenience to it. So Brent Lane, of course, competitor in the College Hoops 2K8 tournament, got my laptop plugged into a gaming setup with the works, 24-inch, 240Hz monitor, etc. Then uses a Moonlight NVIDIA game stream to play on the 65-inch bedroom TV at night, almost zero latency, basically indistinguishable from HDMI, with an Xbox Series S wireless controller and launch box for a console interface. That's cool too.
I mean, 65 inches. He's got me beat. That's one hell of a gaming experience if you can have a good picture on a 65-inch screen. So I'm sure he really enjoys that. 24-inch monitor. I feel like that would be a little bit small for my couch, but I know his face is right in front of it, so I'm sure that looks great. Series S controller. I didn't get the Xbox Series S and Series X controllers to work well on my PC. For some reason, I think I have to download something on my PC in order to get them to work or calibrate them a certain way. So I just stick with the Xbox One wireless controller. It works with all my games.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to my setup there with the 22-inch monitor that I have. If I was having to sit away from it, no, it wouldn't be good at all. You're straining your eyes, you're leaning forward to see what's going on. So you definitely want to be, that's so important for ergonomics and whatnot, to have that the size of the screen, whether it's a monitor or a TV, that suits the size of the room and how far away you're sitting from it. So important from health as much as the quality of the gaming experience. Health and ergonomics is a concern as well.
Right. I also want to bring up another point that about his setup. He brought up 240 hertz. A lot of people like those, like the monitors that can achieve, like a higher than 60 FPS frame rate, right? I don't even see the difference really between 60 and 120 or 60 and 144 or anything like that. My TV goes up to 60 hertz, so I can achieve 60 FPS max on all my games. But that's how you're viewing all your videos on YouTube. People have complimented the smoothness of all of my gameplay videos and everything. 60 FPS is a huge jump from 30 FPS, but if you go 60 to like 120, like I can't even see the difference. So I'm perfectly fine with that setup for me as far as like frames per second that I can get. But I do see that there's a lot of people that, they want even higher or the newest or best.
Per DxDO, I got a pre-built gaming desktop from 2018. Some of the specs are pretty outdated, but I recently upgraded the RAM to 16 gigabytes, use a 24-inch 60Hz Acer monitor, and mostly use a wired third-party Xbox controller. Yeah, as you said, Derek, a lot of pre-built systems can do the job.
I've connected with him multiple times now on Parsec, and he was part of the stream as well when I streamed NBA Street Volume 2. I'm sure his computer does pretty much everything that he needs it to do, outside of getting the PlayStation 3 emulator to run games the way he would like them. And that seems to be his sticking point. So I'm sure that his PC is perfectly fine, running, the Steam games, the latest Steam games, etc.
So next up is Silver33. He is playing and modding on a desktop with a 27-inch monitor, and he's also using an Xbox controller. I'm using a Logitech, as I mentioned before, a PC controller, pretty much so I don't have to switch between my consoles and use those as well, and switch back and forth between the console and the PC. But yeah, a lot of people using Xbox controllers, as you are, because of the compatibility, which again is awesome.
So I do want to make a point too about his setup. So he does have that smaller monitor right now, but he made it a point to tell me that he's buying a Samsung Odyssey Arc 55-inch 4K mini LED curved monitor. And he's going to be getting that, and that's what he's going to be gaming on. So he's upgrading, getting an extra like 20 plus inches for his monitor and higher quality. So he's pretty excited about that.
Finally, we have Tecmo Bowl GGL. Tecmo Bowl obviously taking part in the tournaments as well. Also running a desktop with an Xbox controller and a 27-inch monitor, 1440p.
There you go. So yeah, it seems like 24 to 27 inches is the popular choice for monitors. And just like your setup, like I said, is the most common. I think a lot of people do have computer chairs and they're sitting at a desk, etc. Unless you're like Nate and whatnot and sitting with you have a laptop in your lap, etc. and you can sit on the couch. Yeah, and Tecmo Bowl, he took part in our NBA Jam on Fire Edition tournament, and I know he had a blast.
And it wasn't something that we asked, but I'd also be interested to see people that play on both PC and console, because you and I are kind of that way. There are a lot of people, the PC versus console wars, that some people are very passionate about one or the other. But I've always enjoyed gaming on both. Some have had exclusives, some have been multi-platform games, but yeah, I've always been both a PC and console gamer.
Yeah, I prefer PC, but I mean, Christ, my brother and I are over 100 games combined now, over 120 games combined into a MLB The Show 2020 season on our PlayStation 4, right? And we just finished the entire season and the finals on NBA 2K22 for Xbox Series X. So yeah, definitely not opposed to console gaming. I love console gaming. I just prefer playing on PC if I can.
And of course, we have the benefit of modding on PC, which is why it's been such a big part of our community over the years, kind of founded as that PC gaming and modding community. But we are welcome to PC and console gaming alike. So join us in the forum, of course, and whichever platform you're playing on, and join in the conversation.
Yeah, one of the best things about the top 10 is we get highlights from both PC and console, right? Like we have at B-Ball Video Games and at BF Baller, who are constantly sending me highlights from their console gaming experiences. And in fact, the NBA Live 2001 Legends, what they're doing is they're taking footage with their cell phone. They're recording their NBA Live 2001 games, and that's where they get their footage from their PlayStation 2. So I find that very interesting and neat.
We do need to set up that 2v2 in Live 2001 with them.
Yeah, I'm having a blast connecting with Nate and playing Live 2001, and I think that the 2v2 would be a lot of fun.
So thank you to everybody who sent in those responses. And what I also like about those responses, Derek, no one was being elitist about it. They were just sharing their rigs.
Yeah, I like the community that we have here right now with the NLSC, and just, interacting with us in general. With your Andrew handle on Twitter, and mine, my D for 3 channel. So no, I really like the way the community is moving forward.
So stay tuned every week for the mailbag prompt that we put out there. As you said, Derek, always great to hear from our listeners. Those responses to those questions, always very interesting, and we appreciate you interacting with us. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 419 of the NLSC Podcast. We thank you for tuning in. The NLSC Podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com, of course. You can also tune in wherever you find your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, or indeed tune in on our YouTube channel. And speaking of community interaction, Derek, we do want to connect with people on social media as well. So what are your handles, and do you have any other final announcements or words for our listeners this week?
Tune into the College Hoops 2K8 tournament. Make sure that you're paying attention, because we're almost into the Final Four now, and these games are going to be completely awesome and epic. So tune into that. Make sure to continue to send me your highlights for the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week, and reach out to me to connect on Parsec, because I'm gaming with anybody and everybody lately. You can reach me on Twitter at D4384 or at D43G. I'm on YouTube, D43, and also on the NLSC, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. We're on Instagram at NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, NBA-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.